anybody's here?
Potentially one other person joining us, but I won't delay you getting started, Trish, if he
Okay.
joins.
Because we
Okay.
have to do the election of our clerk anyway, so. Okay, 7 o'clock, let's get started. Meeting of the Pennichuck Water Special Committee, held today, April 14th, 2022, at 7 p.m. in the Aldermanic Chamber and via Zoom, which meeting link can be found on the agenda on the city's website. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. If you're participating by Zoom, please state whether there's anyone in the room with you during this meeting and your reason for not participating in person, which is under the right to know. The roll call will be taken by Alderman Lopez as a temporary clerk until we can get him in there permanently. Alderman Lopez, could you call the roll, please?
Alderman Lopez is present. Alderman Patricia Clee.
Here.
Alderman at large Michael B. O'Brien.
Present.
Senior, sorry. Alderman Rick Dowd.
Present.
And Alderman at large Melbourne Moran.
Present.
And we have 5 members in the chamber. So that means we don't have to do roll call. We may have to do roll call. I'm not sure when it comes to the,
I don't think so.
okay.
Well, we can also note in attendance the Pennichuck members.
Yes, in attendance, Pennichuck members are President Goodhue, Donald Ware, John Lusting, John Boisvert, George Torres. Is that it? I think that's it, right?
If you'd like the titles on those, Trish?
Yes, if you wouldn't mind, I'll let you do
Okay.
that then. Thank you.
Larry Goodhue, CEO and CFO. Donald Ware, Chief Operating Officer. John Boisvert, Chief Engineer. George Torres, Chief Accounting Officer and Treasurer. Representing our Board of Directors, Director Jay Lustig.
Thank you. Now we'll go into the election of the clerk. Is there a nomination? Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It gives me great pleasure to nominate for clerk Alderman Tom Lopez as the Pennichuck Water Special Committee Clerk.
Thank you, Alderman. Is there a second? Alderman Dowd.
We don't need a second, but I'll make a motion to close nominations.
Okay, thank you very much. I assume that there were no others volunteering.
Are you sure? Nobody else?
Okay, I think we could just go with a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against? Hearing none, I will assume five yeas. Okay, next, public comment. I don't see anybody on website, and there's nobody here in the chamber, so moving on, communications.
Here's a communication from Larry D. Goodhue, Chief Executive Officer of Pennichuck, regarding notice of annual meeting of sole shareholders and proxy statement, proxy card, and annual report of the sole shareholders. Can I get a motion to accept it and place on file?
Yes, I was just gonna say that. A motion and place on file.
So moved.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against, nay? No nays, the ayes have it.
Never.
More communications?
I do not believe so. I think
Yes,
that's it.
there's one more.
Madam Clerk,
Yes,
you could say, if there's no objection, you can just take the thing and waive
okay,
the reading.
without
and place
objection,
it.
okay. I must be missing it on the outline here. That's okay. There is one more.
Find it, though.
Okay, there is one more, so if you wouldn't read that, we'll just do it without objection.
Yep, there is a communication from Larry D. Goodhue, Chief Executive Officer of Pennichuck, regarding Pennichuck's audited consolidated financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2021 and December 31st, 2020.
There being no objection, we will accept the communications.
Waive the reading.
Pardon?
And waive the reading.
And waive the reading. Thank you, Alderman Dowd. Unfinished business,
There is none.
new business resolutions,
There is none.
new business ordinances.
There is none.
Okay, but we do have to, if I'm not mistaken, I don't see it here on the.
Well, Madam Chair,
Yes,
I think we do have another pending motion.
to accept the,
Would you like me to read the motion? Would that help?
It's why we're here.
Yeah,
the reason why we're here, yeah.
probably under general discussion. But
Yeah, I was
if
gonna
you would
say,
read it, that'd be
yes,
great.
please.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to make a motion to recommend that the sole shareholder increase the number of directors from 11 to a full slate of 13, and to elect the following individuals to the Pennachuck Corporation Board of Directors until their successors are elected and qualified. George Bauer, Anne Marie R. Corriveau, J. N. Lusty, John D. McGrath, and Preston J. Stanley, Jr., to the Pennachuck Corporation Board of Directors as Class A directors, each for a 3-year term, and until their successors are elected and qualified, and to elect Sarah Pillsbury to the Pennachuck Corporation Board of Directors as a Class C director for a term of 2-year term, and until her successor is elected and qualified, and to authorize the mayor to transmit by proxy card the vote of the sole shareholders to the Board of Directors of the Pennachuck Corporation. And Madam Chair, it does recommend by roll call.
Madam Chair, could I just ask a question? Maybe it's
Absolutely.
bad sound on the system. Was C. George Bauer included in the first that Alderman
Yes.
O'Brien read?
It said-
I did not hear him included.
Yes, it just says George Byer. Should it say C. George Byer?
Waiver.
C. George, yes,
C as in Carl, or, so,
right.
okay.
Right.
It does
I
just
just want to
say,
mention that he was included in that list.
it was the first name that he spoke, and it's written as George Bauer, but we'll make that correction to say C. George Bauer.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. And we will take a roll call on that? Or
Yeah,
we just-
and Madam Chair, to make it official, I amend that motion too.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the motion has been amended, and I apologize, I'm gonna look to you, Alderman O'Brien. Do I need to vote on the amendment to it, or you're just amending the, because not an amendment?
I think it was just a correction of the.
It was just a
of the-
correction.
Of the reading.
But
Okay.
where I made the motion, Madam Chair, I felt just to amend it, that's all,
I
just a
appreciate that.
correction.
It doesn't substantially change the reading.
And I thank Mr. Goodhue for getting the name correct for the record, thank you.
Okay, could we take a roll call on that, please?
Yep, Alderman Patricia Clee,
Yay.
Alderman at Large Michael B. O'Brien Senior,
Yes,
Alderman Richard A. Dow,
Yes,
Alderman Thomas Lopez says yes, and Alderman at Large Melbourne Moran Jr.
Yes.
Okay, that is 5 yeas, and that motion passes.
Madam Chair.
We do have another,
Do we want to give Mr. Goodhue an opportunity to speak to what's
to the next.
going on?
Yes. Thank you very much. Mr. Goodhue, would you, and I apologize for kind of fumbling through this. It's my first time as chair of this, and this one is a little unique in this meeting. So, Mr. Goodhue, if you would, please.
Sure thing, thank you, and I appreciate that. You know, this activity tonight is something we only do once a year, so it's easy to say, okay, what is it we need to do again? And, you know, just voted on, you know, we have an annual shareholder meeting coming up on May 7th. It's at 9 o'clock in the morning, and it's being held in our distribution facility, it's Highway. And we welcome, you know, anyone to attend that meeting. We've got a fairly significant room there, so we have adequate spacing to hold that room, the meeting in a live setting with adequate social distancing deployed during the course of that meeting. Voted tonight to elect or re-elect some directors. As it was indicated in the vote, it takes our slate of directors up to the full slate of 13 allowed for under our bylaws. One of the directors is a Nashua resident, meeting the requirements of the 5 seats that need to be filled by Nashua directors, and one is per se an at-large director. So we're a fully fitted board with this, once this is actually voted at the meeting. One of the new directors is being added to the Class A directors and one to the Class C, such that we have fairly equal distribution between the three classes of director. Because we have a board, such that they have expiring terms on a annual basis in 3 successive years. And so that's why one is being added to a 2-year term and will be up for re-election in 2 years based on the class that they're being put into at this time. Also, I submitted to you in communications and separate communications the annual report to the sole shareholder, which is an unaudited report of the results of operation of the corporation for the year just concluded, as well as certain dialogue and communication in a written form to the shareholder to keep you fully apprised of activities going on at the company, not just from a financial perspective, but also gives certain things as far as significant capital projects that have been completed, various things relative to our corporate governance, relative to our relationship. And then in a separate communication was the audited financial statements transmitted to you. Those were done in 2 separate communications this year, and it is a new precedence that will be going forward because the Financial Accounting Standards Board, or FASB, passed some new regulations this year that if we sent them to you in every part of the communication we sent to you would have been subject to a full audit, and we didn't feel that it was worthwhile to spend time auditing something other than our audited financial statements.
Excuse me, Mr. Goodhue, you cut out.
Hence, it's in 2 communications.
Mr. Goodhue, you cut out at one point, so I just want to reiterate something I know that you said. What you said is if you had put the documents in as one, it would have had to been a full audit. The as one kind of bleeped out there for a bit, so I just want to make sure we get that on the record.
Everything in the communication to you would have been subject to audit, which is contrary to the objectives of a financial audit once a year to audit the financial statements of the corporation for reasonableness and accuracy on a material basis. And so that's why there are 2 separate communications this year and will be so on a going forward basis. I don't know if you had any specific questions relative to the annual report, the audited financial statements, as both myself and Mr. Torres, who is our Chief Accounting Officer and Treasurer, on the line, or if you had any specific questions relative to the nomination process and our corporate governance process, as Mr. Lustig, here as a representative of the Board of Directors and a member of that committee, the Corporate Governance and Nominating Committee, would be ready to give any color that you would like relative to that aspect. And then, of course, we've got other members on the line who can talk about certain things that happened in the last year of material nature, one of which is there's a little tank that we built up on a hill in the Kessler Farm area of Nashua that I think Mr. could talk about, or Mr. Ware can answer any questions operationally that you might have.
Sure thing, Larry. This is John Boisvert for the record. Alderman Dowd probably has seen it more recently than me. I haven't been by it in about a week or so, but the finishing in place on that tank, I believe if it hasn't started already, within the next week, they'll start to add the final to that. It'll take them a while. It's hard to imagine a tank that size that they're actually going to paint by hand and rollers. So there'll be an army of people up there painting that tank. But beyond after that, it's fully in service, functioning, doing what it was supposed to do. Happy with the conclusions, and this is going to be getting into the time of the year when the site can be restored, the tree plantings, and all the other things that are associated with that tank will be done. So hopefully things are progressing and we'll be wrapping up fairly quickly.
Thank you, Mr. Boisvert.
Alderman Dowd has a comment or question?
Yeah, I just went by tonight. They haven't started painting it yet. It's probably because they would think it was gonna rain, but
Yeah, and only
I
just.
assume as soon as they get a couple of nice days in a row, they'll be out there with their 3-inch roller.
Right. We want it to be a solid color, not a streaked color, Alderman Dowd, so you're right, absolutely.
Definitely not rust color.
Yes, yes. Are there any specific questions that anybody has? Again, we've got people here. We'd love to be able to communicate to you as the shareholder. You know,
And we
the committee represents the Board of Aldermen, who represents the city as the shareholder. And it is our goal when we meet with you to be as fully communicative and transparent as we possibly can in giving you information about the operations of the water company.
Okay, Alderman Lopez has a question, and then I have a question for you. Alderman Lopez?
Sure.
only a slightly tongue-in-cheek question, but you guys want to borrow my rechargeable sprayer? Because you save a lot on the amount of paint that you use when you use those.
We've opted not to spray because the overspray on people's cars and apartments might be a problem.
Definitely.
It's probably not that strong, but all right.
Madam Chair?
Sure, Alderman Bryan.
We might take Alderman Lopez's graciousness on the barriers, maybe that. Bring your sprayer, sir.
That's how they got done last time.
Yeah, exactly.
But just to clarify for anybody who's listening, the battery-powered sprayers are much lower power than the plugged-in ones, so that is a benefit when it comes to overspray. But for something like the barriers, it also means it'll take them like 10 times as long.
Mr. Goodhue, it's always a question that I fear asking, but at the same time, we have often, the public does not quite understand the sole shareholder, and you have explained it to me over and over, and I appreciate that. Many members of the public feel that because the city quote-unquote owns it, or in that's their opinion, rather than the sole shareholder, we should be able to tell you all exactly what to do and how to do it and so on, and that's not how this works. This is a very unique situation that has never, it's a precedented situation and so on. Would you mind just giving a quick overview of that, if you don't mind so much?
Sure, I would be happy to, and I'll ask Mr. Lustig to add color where I might miss some things. January 25th, 2012 was a seminal date in the history of Pennichuck Corporation and the city of Nashua. And then on that date, the city of Nashua became the sole shareholder of Pennichuck Corporation, which is the parent corporation in the consolidated group, including 3 regulated water utilities: Pennichuck Water Works, Pennichuck East Utility, and Pittsfield Aqueduct Company, as well as an unregulated contract management services company called Pennichuck Water Service Company, and a legacy real estate holding company called the Southwood Corporation, which at this juncture is just a shell corporation because all of the protected lands have either been made Pennichuck Water Works or transferred up into the Pennichuck Corporation, corporation that the city owns. That transaction took Pennichuck Corporation out of public company status. Prior to January 25th, 2012, we were a publicly traded company on the NASDAQ exchange, had public company shareholders, and where it is an expectation as a utility that you're not only a profitable entity, but you're an entity that generate a dividend as a utility. That's an expectation as a utility, as a publicly traded company, or what is called an investor-owned utility. The transaction on January 25th, 2012 was the result of a negotiated settlement between the city and Pennichuck Corporation to complete this transaction, and was a negotiated settlement over a nearly decade-long dispute between the corporation and the city. That eminent domain proceeding went all the way through the Public Utilities Commission, which ruled on the taking, was appealed up all the way up to the New Hampshire State Supreme Court, who remanded it back down to the Public Utilities Commission, who upheld their decision. And that decision was a win and a lose and a lose and a win. It was a win for the city in that they were allowed to take the corporation, but at a price that was far in excess of what the city wanted to purchase and did not have the assets of the corporation that they wished to obtain. It was a loss for the corporation in that the city was allowed to take the company in eminent domain, but then win in that, it wasn't going to happen. So it really forced the parties to the table to negotiate a settlement. As a result of the negotiated settlement, the corporation now is still a private corporation with a municipal shareholder. It is a unique entity in the state of New Hampshire and in the entire country. A specific law was put under the books of the state of New Hampshire under the eminent domain statute, specifically naming the city of and Pennichuck Corporation in this transaction. And so a law was brought in place in order to allow this to happen, where a municipality is a shareholder of a private corporation. So as such, we are not a department of the city. We're not subject to the city's budget. We don't have the ability or taxing authority. We don't have to raise GO bonds, in support our activities there. We are totally debt dependent in order to fund the operations of the corporation based on that transaction. The city at that time raised $150.6 million worth of bonds, revenue bonds, and those bonds are supported by revenues of the 3 regulated utilities within our group. We are also still subject to full regulation by the New Hampshire Public Utilities Commission because the corporation with the 3 regulated utilities serves part or all of 30 different communities within the state of New Hampshire, not just the city of Nashua. We represent or are the public water supplier for virtually all of Nashua. There are some people in Nashua who have private wells. And we serve part of 29 other communities within the state, within the Pennichuck Water Works Company, Pennichuck East Utility Company, or Pittsfield Aqueduct Company. And as such, everything that we do is subject to regulation on a financial basis from the Public Utilities Commission, and everything we do relative to safe drinking requirements, water quality, water source protections, how we deal with anything from that environmental perspective is regulated by the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services, as well as the Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA. So as a result, we are held to a very strict standard relative to everything we do. We can only adjust our rates as we go through filing petitions with the PUC, and we must get approval before we can make any adjustments in our rates relative to either permanent rate changes and or surcharges tied to our QCPAC or our qualified capital project adjustment charge, which is an annual surcharge tied to capital projects that are put in place every single year. Debt funded, so we have to have revenues to cover the debt service on those new assets, as well as the incremental property taxes on those new assets. Mr. Bover, this tank that was just constructed this last year, that tank cost $4.4 million. And that $4.4 million was a slice of the $7 million that we put in place for PWW alone, as well as we put in place about probably $2 million worth of assets in place for Pittsfield East Utility and several $100,000 for Pittsfield Aqueduct, all of which was debt funded just for the year 2021. As a corporation, really very strongly about maintaining an ongoing program of infrastructure replacement. You need to continually monitor and replace aging infrastructure. And the analogy I've used before for people that I think resonates because it kind of brings it down to a base level is if you have a house, paint your house once every couple of years, or maybe one side per year. So every 4 years, you get the whole house painted. Your house has always got a fresh coat of paint, and you're maintaining the house. However, if you go 20 years without painting the house, you don't just need to paint it at the end of 20 years. You're probably going to have to reside it or maybe sheathe it because everything is rotten and gone to pot per se. And so now all of a sudden your expenditure is a much different expenditure. So we have an ongoing replacement program, which John and his group monitor. We have an asset management program, and we do comprehensive and proactive replacement aging infrastructure to make sure that we're constantly maintaining our system in compliance with all the regulations so that we can provide safe, clean drinking water. So hopefully the answer, but I think it's important to understand some of those factors. Mr. Lustig, do you have anything to add to that? You're on mute, Jay.
I think you covered it quite well, Larry. It's always an education.
Thank you.
He's had to tell it so many times that I'm sure it's memorized and tattooed to his brain. Are there any questions here in the horseshoe? Alderman Dowd.
Just a couple quick questions. One, I think I asked this question when we had a meeting not too long ago, whether there was any more lines that piping or anything that had to run across Tinker Road, because we want to finish the paving of Tinker Road, that one section where you put the large pipe through back to the Pennichuck from the new tower.
I'm going to ask Mr. Boisvert to respond to that for you, Alderman Dowd.
Okay.
Alderman Dowd, yeah, that where we work, which would be the east side of the highway, we're complete over there. So everything should be all set to go. That I don't think I can't recall, but I don't think there's any residual work that's left there, nor are we planning any other immediate pipelines along Tinker Road at this point in time.
Because if we pave it, you get a 5-year moratorium.
Absolutely.
Well, we pay for the whole thing.
Yeah, the other question I have is, we have a master paving plan, and we find out week to week what streets are gonna be paved. Do you have, an infrastructure schedule for any streets that you need to have piping, that you stay ahead of the, paving plan?
What we try to do is on a regular basis, our staff are meeting with your Department of Public Works staff. We cannot, well, I wish we could replace pipe at the same rate and speed that the city is paving their roads, but simply not in the case, from a level of effort, we just couldn't do it. But what we are trying to do is that we have a plan that really is looking, 1 to 3 years out. We're keeping an eye on where major construction, other utilities, not only the city, but, the gas company, telecom, and others are. And the city DPW staff has done a really good job at coordinating all of us so that we know where everybody's working. So we'll try to fit those in where we can. Most of the pipe, the water main that we have extensive life, 70, 80 years, and some of our stuff has been in there over 140 years. So I think that, when we look at this, we try to be ready, to respond to the paving, but most of the time, I will say this, the city is much, much faster than we could keep up with, both financially and physically, to be able to replace our infrastructure.
And Mr. Boisvert, would you also say that if the city's identify a street for paving that we know has got a near-term need to replace, or it's a criticality issue, you do adjust your plans in accordance?
Yes, absolutely, Larry. We want to take advantage of that because being in there all together, it allows everybody to coordinate and really make sure it works efficiently. It's less costly for everybody, and we're able to, back in the day where how sometimes we find ourselves on top of each other. It allows us to really reorganize the buried infrastructure of the streets and make sure that there's room for everybody to do their thing.
Thank you.
I just want to add, for our last meeting, I think, Mr. Goodhue, you talked about our sewer project, and you've been working with our public works because your pipes and our sewer pipes are kind of like on top of each other. So you have been moving some of yours in accordance to so I do know that you are working hand in glove with public works to make sure that you're there, and while the hole's open, you might as well fix it then and save, have to do second dig. So
that actually becomes a higher area of criticality, Alderman Clay, because if they're doing sewer replacement, they're our water mains, it makes our water mains then an unstable situation, and that would be really problematic. So that's actually more critical, Mr. Boisvert, would you, than the paving program?
That's correct, Larry. And one of the things in our asset management program that rates very heavily is the proximity of the water main to the existing source. And generally, both those two utilities have been in the ground for some time. So what we look at there is, we look at the city's materials, the depths, and a whole number of things, and we are able to rate and score our infrastructure and prioritize based on where we think or where we might know that it's likely that the city will be moving towards, and maybe not in the next year or two, but certainly 5, 10, or 15 years down the road. So those things will stack up in our priority list.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate the explanation on all points of that. I know it's a long, and I've heard Mr. Goodhue tell the same thing over and over again, and every time I get a little new piece of knowledge that makes me understand it a little bit better. So, and I've been doing this now for 5 years, so I'm sure that those that are new to it, it sounds like a foreign language, but it is a very unique situation. So and I appreciate you working with our public works. Are there any other questions here? No? Okay, I think I had skipped that, and I do want to make a comment. Our wonderful administrative person gave us this outline, and it was my fault that I did not read it properly, so I want everybody to know that she did a phenomenal job, as always, and it was my stumbling here that did that, so. Unfinished business, we said none, correct?
Nobody's gonna impeach you.
You mean nobody wants to sit here?
Nope.
No, but I just want everybody to know that she's doing a great job, so.
There is none.
None. New business?
There is none.
Okay, new business resolutions, none. New business ordinance,
There are none.
general discussion. Mr. Goodhue, did any of your staff or yourself want to add anything more?
Unless you've got any specific questions, Mr. Ware, is there anything specific you would want to share?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Torres?
No, Larry, unless anyone has any specific questions regarding the 2021 audit results, I have nothing to add.
Great, thank you. Mr. Lustig, would you like to add?
Not unless there are questions regarding the selection of board members or the way we did it.
Great, thank you. And I think Mr. Boisvert and I have talked enough probably, so we're probably all set. Right, John?
It's correct, Larry.
I can appreciate that. Is there any other questions or comments here? I did want to thank you very much again. And I also wanted to state, Mr. Goodhue, from our last meeting, when we talked about water pressure and so on, and you don't know what you don't know, and I made it very clear to, and I like to repeat it all the time, to the public. If there are any issues, rather than Facebook complain or even complain to your neighbor, contact Pennichuck Water. Get on their website, the phone number is there. Let them know exactly what's happening, and you guys have revamped the system so even those renters can call in and get it adequately so that you do have a history of what's happening. So I appreciate you guys doing that, and I want the public just to remember that it's better to get the job done by going to the source than just to complain about it. So thank you so much. Public comment? I don't see anybody in the chamber and no one online. Remarks by Alderman? Alderman O'Brien.
Yeah, just want to congratulate Alderman Lopez for volunteering to be the clerk.
Already updating my resume.
I did it before. It's a very rewarding job, so thank you, Alderman Lopez. And Madam Chair, fine job. And I just want to wish everybody, we're coming into a holiday season, so to my Jewish friends, the best of Passover and happy Easter to everybody else, so thank you.
Alderman Dowd?
Yeah, just real quick, thanks for all your assistance and all of our city buildings that we're putting in. There'll be a lot of new uses of water going to the new schools and the new DPW building, and so all those hookups are taking place. Also, I'd just like to let you know that the water coming out of the new tank is crystal clear, cold, and great water pressure. So tank's working like a charm.
That's kind of the trifecta, Alderman Dowd, isn't it?
Alderman Moran?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to echo Alderman O'Brien's wishing of everyone a happy Easter and a happy Passover to our my Jewish brothers and sisters. Today was it's Holy Week. Today's Holy Thursday, and I was going to take my daughter to church tonight, but we had this very important meeting. So she's at St. Christopher's Parish right now with a family friend, and I want to thank that family friend for taking her, and had a great conversation about civic responsibility with my daughter today, and I think she read loud and clear why I couldn't bring her tonight. And we'll have plenty of other opportunities through Sunday.
Very good. It's always a teaching moment, so
Yes.
thank you very much. Alderman Lopez.
I don't know all the religions, but I know Ramadan is also being observed, so I just wanted to acknowledge that for those nations who are recognizing that as well.
Thank you. And I would like to wish each and everyone who is celebrating whichever holiday you are this weekend, today, this past week, my best wishes, and I'm afraid to say it, that I will miss something or somebody, but Easter, Passover, Ramadan, so.
Moon changes or something.
Moon changes, yes. I'm sure that there is some Wiccan holiday in here somewhere too, but not minimizing anything. Alderman O'Brien?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to make a motion to adjourn.
We can do that by voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against? Oh, good. Nice to hear that. I will adjourn the meeting at 7:35. And Mr. Goodhue, thank you so much, you and your staff. I really appreciate it as always. Don, I didn't get to address you, but I use your name in vain all the time. You are my go-to person, so thank you so much. Everybody will go, Don who? What was his name? But thank you so much, all of you, for everything that you do.
Right.
Have a wonderful